Welcome, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Noor. I'm project manager at BAF, and I would like to start today's Twitter space with a quick intro about BAF and why we do these meetups. Thank you so much for coming today. This event is co-organized by BAF and Blockchain at Vanderbilt, led by Lincoln here. Thanks for facilitating today's event. Again, I'm Noor. I'm project manager, and I work at BAF, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that starts university accredited blockchain courses. We build projects, we connect our members to opportunities in the industry, and we try to get as many people as possible into the space. What's cool about BAF is that we are governed by leaders of our affiliated university blockchain clubs, like myself. I'm president of Blockchain at University of Rochester. Lincoln, who is leading today's event, is president of Blockchain at Vanderbilt. We love working with clubs. If you're here and you're active in a blockchain club, please reach out. We have plenty of resources for you if you're interested in co-organizing one of these meetups with us, or if you're interested in sponsorships or career opportunities and career development. We got your back. So yeah, also we're super thankful for all the support that we get from our sponsors who made all of this work possible. BAF is actually funded by Algorand Foundation, Protocol Labs, Ethereum Foundation, and many of our other incredible individual sponsors. I would like to introduce our amazing speaker today. We're very happy to host David, who is the CEO and the lead developer of Skynet. And today's topic is decentralized storage. So I'm going to leave the floor to Lincoln and David. And again, thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Nora, for the introduction. As you said, my name is Lincoln, and I'm the president of Vanderbilt Blockchain. And it's my pleasure to be here today with David. So, Dave, would you mind starting off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing over at Skynet?
Sure. Yes, my name's David. I studied computer science in college, and I've been basically doing SIA or Skynet for my whole life. So we started SIA back in 2014. Work began in like early or late 2013. We formed a company in 2014. We launched the SIA network in 2015, and then in 2020, we launched an upgrade from the SIA network that moved it into the web browser. We called the new thing Skynet. So that's what we've been working on today, up through today. And the main goal of Skynet is to replace the centralized siloed web with a new type of internet where all of the data is available to everyone. So if you think like something like YouTube, YouTube has all the videos, they have all the creators, they have all the followers and subscribers, they have all the data on things like likes and all the telemetry. If you want to make a YouTube competitor, your day one is going to be a platform with 0 users and 0 videos. And we think that the web can be a much more powerful place where people can make video platforms that on day one have all of the videos and all of the creators and all of the comments and all of the information and data that everybody has worked to build together onto the internet. So we really want to move things from this corporation controlled ecosystem to a people controlled ecosystem and give everyone access to all of the data is oil, all of the oil of the internet.
That's fascinating. It sounds like it's an incredibly good opportunity for developers who want to build out these new platforms. And by using Skynet, they have kind of like a prop up in the sense that they have, like you said, all of the videos if they're making a YouTube competitor or whatnot. But for the average internet user, how would Skynet be better than our current centralized model?
Yeah, so the idea is to make the experience kind of invisible and in the background. So on Skynet, you can have this single identity. You can sign into any application using your main identity, and then so you only need to put your password in once. This is different from other like sign in with Google or sign in with Apple prompts because it's decentralized storage. You actually own your identity, you own the data, and you don't have to worry about some corporation cutting you off or changing the rules that allow how you log into other platforms. Aside from that, the real advantage comes to developers, and users benefit because their applications will be richer and more powerful. Imagine, being able to build any front end on Twitter, or imagine being able to make, someone could make an application, a messaging application that combines your messages from, all 100 apps that you use, and you get all of your private messages in one spot. So these are the types of things that aren't possible. It's not possible to build a messaging client today that interoperates with all of the siloed ecosystems, because these siloed ecosystems don't expose that sort of API. But on Skynet, all those APIs are locked open in the first place, which means it's much easier to build rich applications that take advantage of all the amazing data that's available on the internet. So I think users don't notice so much directly, other than just the apps that they use will be more exciting and more powerful.
Interesting. And it sounds like what you're talking about, this sort of idea of a user owning their own identity, is something that's become very prominent and relevant within the blockchain space. So I also wanted to ask you, could you talk a little about how the Sia blockchain is used in Skynet and how that sort of incentive structure works on the decentralized perspective?
Yeah, so the Sia blockchain handles all of the storage. So for example, when you make an identity, your identity is essentially a public key and maybe some information like a profile or your preferred handle. So you have a bunch of metadata, and we roll all of that up into a file, and then we put that file on the Sia blockchain. And to break down the Sia blockchain a little bit more, it's a open decentralized storage marketplace. Anybody who has storage can sell their storage over the Sia network, and they can sell it by forming file contracts with renters. And so a file contract says, this host is required to store this data for this amount of time. And the renter will put some money in the contract. The host will put some money in the contract. And if the host does not keep that data for the specified amount of time, they're going to get slashed. So not only will they not get paid, they'll also lose their collateral.
Okay, interesting. So that's kind of a great segue to my next question about, so if a user wanted to make money using Skynet or Sia, what would be their options? They could, of course, rent their storage out to any other users. Are there other options for them to sort of earn money or be a part of this incentive structure?
Yeah, so we're working on a NFT style platform. It's still very early. We haven't written the first code for it yet. So maybe launch in like 4 months for a very prototype. But we're trying to turn Skynet into a very rich NFT ecosystem where, like, say, every comment on Reddit would be its own NFT. Every video, every thumbnail, like things like fonts, the applications themselves would all be NFTs. And then you kind of license the whole ecosystem in a way that says, like, if you want to load this page, you have to buy NFTs of this page. And so you end up with people spending, like, say, $5 a month to browse Skynet. And in the course of doing that, they're not just paying $5, they're actually earning NFTs. We call it NFT mining. So as you browse Skynet, you just mine NFTs, and this funds the ecosystem. So again, that's not something that we've deployed yet, but it's definitely something we're very interested in and actively working on.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like a really incredibly powerful idea to sort of create that fully individualized internet ecosystem where each person, like you said, has to have an NFT for each image or each website that they visit. Do you think there's any room there for some sort of exploitation? Like, can a person go on a website and be charged more money than they're willing to spend? Or is there some sort of system where each time they go on a website, they would have to sort of allow for that micropayment to take place?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this, but Skynet is already a purely like a fully monetized ecosystem, in the sense that every time you download something, that costs money, you have to pay for it. And every time you upload something, that costs money and you have to pay for it. And it's invisible because that's largely handled, all those payments are handled by the portals. And the portals fund themselves through a freemium model. So most users get to use Skynet for free, but then if you want faster speeds and more storage, you pay, like, say, $5 a month. We're going to incorporate that same sort of model into paid web pages. And so instead of, say, like if a web page is 1 megabyte, the web page could maybe say the user should also buy 10 megabytes of NFTs. And so that means that the page won't load until the user has spent 10 megabytes worth of download price on NFTs. And you can put rate limits in place. So if a page asks for, say, like 50 gigabytes, well, that page is just not going to load for 4 hours or whatever. And so the user doesn't have to be confronted by the prices that they're paying, and we can still give them guarantees that, like, yeah, if you spend 5 hours browsing Skynet, the absolute most that you can pay is $2, because if you were going to pay more, you wouldn't get that much stuff onto your page in 4 hours. It would, your browsing would be slowed down. And so we can give strong guarantees to users that they're not going to be overcharged.
Okay, that sounds like a very elegant system put in place to ensure that the users get what they want and nothing more or nothing less. So you talked a bit about how this NFT is in a very early stage, this NFT idea. So that seems like it'd be one of your goals for 2022. Do you and the Skynet team have any other goals that you're trying to achieve next year?
Yeah, we've got a pretty full plate. The biggest thing that we're working on right now is just the user experience of guaranteeing that the Skynet ecosystem will stay alive, will stay vibrant, that there are many portals, that it's very easy to operate. So to like kind of dive into that a little more, one of the key elements of Skynet right now, and a trusted element of Skynet, is the portal. So users can choose any portal they want. All portals are the same. Portals don't actually store things themselves. It all goes onto the Scion network. Portals just translate requests into, crypto payments and talk to the Scion network. And so at any point in time, it doesn't matter which portal you are using, but you are trusting today that the portal is kind of answering your requests honestly. And so this is the same model that Infura is under. But it's also something that we recognize can be improved. So one big thing that we're looking at is a browser extension that will kind of police the portal and make sure that every request you send to a portal, if the portal is lying or being dishonest in the response, your browser will be able to catch it and just not serve that response, or raise a flag and say this portal is evil, or whatever. So that's one of the big things that we're looking at for 2022. And then I think the other big thing is we have some improvements to the SDK and to the data model that will make performance a lot faster for super rich data environments. That's something that maybe I can dive into separately.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, if you could dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so earlier this year, I want to say around March, we introduced this idea of a DAC, which is short for Data Access Controller. And what a DAC is it's a piece of storage owned by the user that is private to one application. So only that application can see the raw data. But then that application serves an API that other applications can use. And so the most popular and prominent DAC on Skynet today is called, I believe, Profile DAC. And what Profile DAC does is it allows users to set a username, a profile picture, and some metadata fields like where they live or what their location is. And so all of this data is in one place. It's protected because only Profile DAC can actually modify that data. And only Profile DAC can read that data. But all other applications in the ecosystem can ask Profile DAC to serve that data for them. So if I'm making, say, like a blogging platform, and I want users to have their profile images next to the comments they write, I can just ask Profile DAC, hey, what is the profile image for this user? I'll get a profile picture back, and then you get this nice, clean, like common data. You don't need to re-upload your profile image every time you switch applications. So already we're seeing big advantages over the centralized web, where it's like I have a different profile on Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and Twitch and all of my socials. I have to like redo my profile from scratch. On Skynet, that's just not the case. I set an identity once, and then all the applications, no matter who built them, get to use that same identity, and I don't have to worry about, a malicious application corrupting my identity. I know that Profile DAC will keep it safe. So this is great for like single DAC levels, but a lot of power comes from DACs making requests to other DACs that then make requests to other DACs. And so an example might be like, you could have a social network DAC that talks to Profile DAC, and the social network DAC tracks, who all your friends are and who all your followers are. And so if we have, like, say, a Twitter application following the social network DAC, which follows the Profile DAC, now we have a lot of nesting, and we have a much more like rich information ecosystem. The problem with that is the way DACs are set up today using iframes, that's too slow. And so you can really only fit about 3 to 5 DACs into an application today before things start to slow down. And that means developers kind of have to be choosy. If you choose Profile DAC, that means there are other things that you can't choose without really hurting the performance of your application. So we have a new way of doing this with web workers, and we're calling it kernel modules. That we're going to be transitioning to. And so that's something we're excited about, because it raises the limit from 3 to 5 to about 1,000. And so applications will be able to get a much more rich, data environment and not have to be as choosy about, which 5 DACs make the most sense for my application. They can just have 1,000 DACs and not really worry about it. So let me know if any of that is like, if you want me to go into any of that a bit more.
Yeah, no, that was a very interesting elaboration on it. It seems like these DACs are a great building block tool for these developers that really allow apps to build on each other in a way that really hasn't been done before, so seamless and uniform. What do you see, if you have any envisioning of what's going to happen with these DACs? Like, how do you see in a year from now what kind of platform is going to be built when we have this limit of 1,000 instead of 5?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I'm kind of excited about, I think it'll happen a little bit later, but is that common messaging platform. So you can imagine, like, on Twitter I have DMs, on Telegram I have DMs, on Discord I have DMs, and if all of this is open data, we could just make something like a DM DAC that everyone talks to. Every application talks to the DM DAC rather than implementing their an entire messaging system from scratch. And then you could have another DAC that say extends the direct message DAC to put financial transactions on top of it. And you can have DACs that say talk to Ethereum. And then you can have like aggregator DACs. Let's say there's a DAC that talks to Ethereum, and a different DAC that talks to Cosmos, and a different DAC that talks to, let's say Bitcoin. You could have, just a money DAC on top of that abstracts over all of that. And so the user just sees like a wallet with a stablecoin balance, and then on the back end, they're allowed to send money, to any blockchain that they want. And the developer building that application doesn't actually have to implement every blockchain themselves. They just pull in the DACs. And again, today that's a little bit hard, because if you're creating a DAC that's talking to money DAC that's, aggregating 6 blockchains, like now we're at 7, and all we've done is money. We haven't even done things like profiles. And so, that's too slow to do today. But after we upgrade to modules, 7 out of 1,000 is nothing. And so you can do that without blinking, and also use, 10 other DACs that are also 7, 10, 20 deep, and be confident that your application will provide a reasonable, exciting experience for your end user.
Wow, that's incredibly fascinating. It really does sound like the next really generation of the internet, in the sense that we had this initial sort of interoperability where we had our Google accounts that could sign into both our Facebook and our Instagram, or our Snapchat, whatever else. But now, using Skynet, there's a way for our entire sort of digital identity, digital storage system to be transitioned from app to app, and in a seamless sort of manner. I think that's a very powerful tool. That'll be incredibly exciting to see what people can build out of this. So another question I had for you is that it's sort of fascinating to see that we're finally able to have blockchain proliferate in a way that is somewhat separated from this complex world of cryptocurrency, and that anyone can sort of easily use Skynet with a credit card, and it makes it appeal to a much wider audience in that sense. Do you have any other plans as far as bringing Skynet mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think is a big pain point on the internet today is corporate moderation. And essentially that's like these corporations and like the biggest offenders I think would be like Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube. They just come down on creators with these arbitrary rules. And something that we saw a lot over quarantine was that YouTube content creators just wouldn't say the word COVID, right? They would say like, well, it rhymes with Movid, but I'm not going to say it because I might get demonetized. And my livelihood is at stake of making Google upset. So I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to let Google kind of oppress me and control how I interact with my audience because, I am chaperoned with by this, invisible entity that I don't understand very well. And every time I see that happening, it just like deeply hurts because I really want to live on an internet where like if I follow someone, I want them to be able to share their true thoughts with me, right? And I want creators to be accountable to their audience and their audience alone. And I think these like, especially like unelected, like, it's not a government that elected Google. It's not a democratic process. Like Google is just this thing with a lot of power, and it's the only way to be a successful video creator. And I think that's really awful. And so one of the biggest like passions for me about Skynet is asking like, how can we build an ecosystem where content creators and influencers can build an audience that their entire accountability is just to their audience. And as long as they're making their audience happy, they don't have to, watch their mouth, or they don't have to be careful about what they wear. They don't have to be afraid of, even if it's just superstition and it's fake. The fact that you're afraid of being demonetized by saying the word COVID just completely changes the nature of the discussion. And nobody feels free speaking on an internet where, at the snap of a finger, Twitter can pull 12,000 followers out from under my feet and set me back to 0 followers. That just, it suffocates freedom of speech on the internet.
Yeah, I can completely agree. Those are some fantastic points. Like the example I always use when I'm talking to people about it is with Venmo. I could send somebody a request on Venmo saying, thanks for the Coke. Me talking about a sugary brown drink, Venmo talking about a powdery white substance, and permanently ban me for some miscommunication that makes no sense. And the idea of these internet companies having so much power over these content creators who truly are independent workers is something that should definitely be fixed. And it sounds like it's being fixed with Skynet. But of course, on the other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's a funny real world example where someone paid their friend like 12 bucks, and just the note said Cuban, and it was a Cuban sandwich. So they had like bought a Cuban sandwich at a sandwich store. Venmo interpreted this as Cuban cigars. This was before the sanctions lift, and so Venmo banned this person for buying Cuban cigars over Venmo, even though it was just a Cuban sandwich. So yeah, it's like it really does hurt people, and when it does hurt people for real, like you start to be careful, and it's like I'm not going to put my real note in my Venmo thing. I'm going to say something that's super benign every time, just like lunch. Every Venmo transaction says lunch because I don't want Venmo to think something incorrect. I don't want to use a word that has a Department of Justice implication, even if I'm being completely honest and not involved in anything shady.
Yeah, it's just absurd. Like that example alone proves how crazy it is that we have such a small group of entities sort of controlling how we feel like we're able to say stuff online, no matter how benign it actually is. But of course, on the other end of that, there is the argument that a decentralized storage platform could host lots of illegal content or dangerous, harmful material and it could not be taken down. Do you think there's any sort of middle ground that should be taken, or do you think it should be a purely free system where anyone can post whatever they want and it's up to the people on that system to sort of self-choose what they associate with?
Yeah, so I think the best way to think about Skynet is as like a a bunch of islands. And it doesn't matter what's on Skynet because you only need to be exposed to what is on your island in particular. And so if we go back to, instead of like a content creator and an audience, let's say like a Discord moderator and their community. And so if, the Discord moderator and their community on Skynet have full control over what's allowed inside of their community. And if they want to say something like, no swearing whatsoever, just no, this is a kid-friendly space. Anyone who swears is not allowed here. Skynet gives you that power. Like decentralization does not mean that there's no moderation. What it means is that the moderation is decided by the users and the cohorts rather than decided by, this faceless overlord. And so it's completely possible to build, quote unquote, clean communities on Skynet that are, kid friendly and that parents would feel safe, letting a 7-year-old loose on, within this community, because there is still moderation. It's just that you get to elect your moderator by nature of like which room you join. And then, you and that moderator have full control over what content is allowed. And so I think that I just don't like looking at Skynet from a lens of like, oh, this uncensorable thing that can't take stuff down, because it totally can. If you care about having an experience that's like, free of adult content, that's something you can totally curate for yourself, and make sure that your Skynet experience is a clean experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at the end of the day, it gives you the choice instead of some company, some person, some group that you've never met before in your life. And you get to choose what you want to see.
Exactly. Or at the very least, you get to choose who controls what you see. And if if there is a big company that tends to do a good job, you can choose that company. But then later on, if you decide they're being too oppressive, suddenly like COVID, if they're suddenly making it illegal to talk about or not allowed, I guess, to talk about, say, not wearing masks, and you decide, that's a line too far. On Skynet, you have full freedom to choose another moderator. And all of that discussion can still follow with you. You don't have to leave a community to change the moderation rules around you.
Fascinating. Yeah, that freedom of choice that's so not much seen in our internet today. Sounds like it'll be very, very useful on Skynet in this next sort of generation of the internet. So another question that I had for you is that how would you convince some sort of developer or somebody who is looking to create an app to use Skynet and create their app as a Skynet app, or SCAP, as I believe you call it?
Yeah, so for developers, we have a lot of advantages. I would say like the most immediate advantage is that because all of Skynet is paid for by users, you just have no bills as a developer. If you create, like, let's say a video application, traditionally, this is a very expensive thing to do. If you have a video application that suddenly gets 10 million users who all watch, an hour of videos per week, or maybe 5 hours of videos per week each, you're going to be paying, like, say, $2 or $3 million a month for bandwidth bills. This is going to be extremely scary. You have to have a monetization plan. You have to know what you're doing. And so like a video startup that isn't ready for growth, that hits sudden growth, is going to collapse under the weight of their bills. On Skynet, everything is user paid. And so if you go from, 100 users to 1 million users in 3 months, you don't actually have to figure out how to pay for all that bandwidth because Skynet takes care of all the costs for you. Storage and bandwidth both are all placed on the users. If you have 10 million users, that means, there are 10 million people accessing portals. They have some relationship to the portal that pays for their consumption. And the other side of this coin is that not only is it free, but because it's free, it's super easy. You don't you don't have a host. Like, you don't have to find a hosting provider. You don't have to sign up for anything. You just kind of push your application out into the wild and then tell someone the link, and it just works. And so the barrier to getting started with a application on Skynet is extremely low compared to, say, launching on AWS or launching on DigitalOcean. You don't need a credit card. You don't need an account. Anyone, even like a 15-year-old playing around in their mom's basement, can ship an application, and if that application gets to 10 million users, is like fantastic. Like, that's something to celebrate rather than something to dread.
Interesting. So is there any sort of that you could see some sort of barrier to entry that somebody who's used to hosting on centralized web services would find? Because I feel like a lot of people, when they hear blockchain as that sort of buzzword, they get intimidated by the idea of blockchain development. When I think, as you're about to say, it's probably just as easy as centralized, if not more easy than centralized server development.
Yeah, so the major thing is that it depends on what you're building. If you're familiar with the Jamstack, or really just any process for building static applications, it is strictly easier. You can put static applications on Skynet, and the barrier to entry is very low. Where it gets a little bit harder is if you want to use something like, say, PHP, or if you're following a tutorial and then the tutorial is like, now install MySQL, or PostgreSQL, or any other MongoDB. Skynet does not have server-side support. So you have to build your applications entirely client-side, entirely talking to this decentralized storage network, which offers a very different set of APIs than what you would get from, say, a cPanel instance. And so I would say it's not difficult. In fact, I would say, on the whole, it is probably easier to develop in the Skynet model than it is to develop in the centralized model. The challenge is that it's significantly different. It's like switching from jogging or it's like switching from jumping rope to swimming. It's a very different way to build applications, and because it's so new, there are a lot less tutorials. If you want to know how to build a messaging service on the centralized web, you're going to find 100 different tutorials that say that these are good ways to build DM systems with a server. If you look up how do I build a good messaging system on Skynet, even though the answer probably has fewer steps, there also aren't going to be any tutorials yet. It's really going to be up to you to figure out what those steps are. And so this is, I would say, just a maturity thing. And so over the coming years, I'm sure that will change. We will get more and more information out about how to do various things and set up various constructions that exist on the centralized web. But yeah, so I guess it's not all rainbows, just in the sense that it's different and it's new. And so therefore there aren't as many tutorials on the decentralized web as there are on the centralized web. But I also think that means there's a lot of opportunity. If you're the first one, you have this big advantage over everyone who comes after you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even looking at Ethereum and Solidity, when that came out, there was no tutorials on it. Now it's a massive developer community. And if you're one of the first, such as Uniswap, Compound, whatever else, you're doing great. So it does provide an incredible opportunity and incentive for developers who are willing to try out something new and build something new to be on the ground floor of that.
Absolutely.
So I noticed on Skynet right now, you have about 200 or so skapps. Do any of those stand out to you as some of the favorites that you've seen so far?
You can't ask me to pick between children. Yeah, no, I can talk through a couple that I really like. So I already talked about Sky Profile. I'm a huge fan of Sky Profile because it's like, it really annoys me every time that I go to another website and it's like, what's your username? Like, what's your email? What's your profile picture? And it's like, I've put this information in 500 times. Like, how have you not found it? Even in like a database leak, like you could just go look up database leaks and get all my information. So I really like Sky Profile because it means that I don't have to upload my profile anymore when I'm using Skynet apps. And when someone releases a new social media app, I can just start using it. I don't have to do any profile setup. So I really appreciate that. There's one scapp that from what I understand, it's by far our most popular SCAP. I think many thousands, maybe even over 100,000 people have used this application. It's called SkySend. It's very simple. It's just an upload box. You drop a file into the upload box, it encrypts it, and then puts it on Skynet and gives you a secure link to access that file that you can then share with friends. So if you want to share encrypted files with friends, you can use SkySend, and it's a very basic app. But the fact that it's the most popular SCAP on Skynet kind of shows that if you solve a key problem, which is like how do I reliably send a 3 GB file to a friend that I need encrypted, it's got family photos or whatever, sensitive information on it. I really want it to be between me and my friend. How do I do that? SkySend solved that problem, and it solved it in a convenient enough way that people have fallen in love with it. So I'm a big fan of that application, just because it shows that like you don't need to be fancy to be amazing. You just have to solve a real problem that people struggle with. Kind of in the similar vein, there's an app called Sky Transfer that I'm super excited about. It's similar to SkySend, except instead of putting one file in at a time and getting one link per file, you get a box. And so you can put files into this box, and then you can share the entire box with your friend. But even more, your friend can continue putting files in the box, and you'll see the new files that show up. And so it's like, or maybe they're called buckets. Regardless, it basically creates a decentralized encrypted Dropbox where I can create something, send it to my friends, and then we can all share, like within our company we can share, like, say, private files or like PDFs or images or things things that we're working on professionally that we don't want the world to see. We have this super convenient way to create a company-wide box that people can use and interact with. And then I'll give one more, which is called Rift App. So Rift App is kind of a product suite, and one of the big things that it has in it is docs. And so you can create like notes to yourself, or you can like scratch out a journal. You can keep a list of IPFS links. You can keep whatever thoughts you have. You can put them in this Rift docs. And so that's also something that I've found to be incredibly convenient, especially if I'm doing like using getting SkySend links or something. I can paste them into this Rift doc. I can annotate them and like let myself know what these things are. And so that's another one that I found to be just super useful, and I've enjoyed using and have used a fair amount.
Yeah, it was also incredibly interesting. It's a good point that you made about how the simplest problems are usually the ones that get the most use, like you said with the one with the downloads. So far, the two favorites that I've seen when I was messing around with it on the other day were one where you could message other people. You would enter some sort of code, and then you could see all the messages associated with that code, and a decentralized Minecraft server where you could play Minecraft on the Skynet ecosystem and invite your friends as well. And it just seems like a really incredibly powerful tool that anyone is able to create these sort of trustless, decentralized servers or environments where that type of stuff, like encrypted downloads and even playing video games, can happen.
Yeah, and I think we're just barely getting started. I think there are a lot of techniques for doing cool things that I think most people haven't realized or gotten used to or figured out how to use yet. So I think we're in the very beginnings of like just a very interesting, much more rich and much more open internet. And I think that's going to have a lot of power.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited to see how this turns out over the coming weeks and years as more people get involved and join and learn about Skynet. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions. If anyone would like to speak and ask a question, feel free to just request to speak, and we'll get you in here and you can ask whatever questions you have. So feel free to do that now if anyone has any questions.
And while we wait for questions, I can talk about an application that we made, internal team. So everything else that I've talked about today all of those applications have been community applications. So it's not even stuff that we've worked on ourselves. It's things that developers in the community have built for the Skynet community. One thing that we made internally is an application called Home Screen. And the goal was to give users control over the front ends that they use in the rest of the Web3 ecosystem. So for example, Uniswap, and if you go to app.uniswap.org, what's happening is that the developers and the developers server is serving you the front end. And you don't know that the front end that you're receiving is the honest front end. You don't know that it's the code you're expecting. And so the developers could do things, and not that they would, but if they got compromised, if they got compelled by the law, or if something bad happened, the developers could serve you code that lies about what address you're sending to, that changes what contract you're talking to. And this actually happened with the Miso wallet. It's a hack that I believe resulted in something like $800,000 of losses. Someone got control of the front end server, and they just swapped the address, so that when users thought that they were buying NFTs, they were actually just sending money to an attacker's wallet, which of course is an absolute disaster that could have been avoided if users had decentralized, total control over the front ends that they were using. So Home Screen is a application that allows you to install DeFi front ends and other front ends into your own decentralized storage, so that way when you load it, it's coming from you. It's the same front end you've been using the whole time, and it's not something that got maliciously changed at the last second. And kind of another feature of Home Screen is it remembers all of the previous versions you've used. So let's say Uniswap pushes an update that where they delist like 100 assets, and one of those assets is your favorite. You can actually go into your Home Screen manager and downgrade. You can go back to the version of Uniswap that did not have these assets taken out of the front end. And so that's something that we're presenting as like something powerful you can do on Skynet that, to the best of our knowledge, you cannot do on any other platform. So yeah, that's something we've been excited about internally.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think it was a couple months ago, the Uniswap front end was asked to stop allowing for transfers of synthetic stocks, like from Mirror or the Synthetics protocol. So something like this seems like the perfect solution to that, where it's not really up to Uniswap Labs as the company to actually say what you can or cannot swap.
Exactly. Yeah. The point is to put the power in users' hands, and then if you do that, Uniswap can honestly go back to regulators and say like this is out of our control, and like they're not lying, that it's actually out of their control. And so we get to protect the ecosystem better by making sure that every component of the stack is truly decentralized.
All right, so I guess if we don't have any questions from the audience, we can head out a little bit early. Thank you again so much, David, for coming on and speaking with us and talking to us about the future of the decentralized internet. It sounds like an incredibly exciting vision that you all have over at Skynet, and I'm super excited to see how it's going to turn out.
Sorry about that. My app closed and I was glitching out. But I'll say it was awesome to be here. Thanks for hosting me, and I think this was an incredible day. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining, and thank you to BAF for hosting this event. It was great talking to you all. Have a good night.